This is the Drake Insights Podcast, your weekly dose of cutting-edge senior living marketing insights. Join me, your host, Natasha Drake, for bold ideas, proven strategies, and inspiring stories straight from the experts. Tune in and let's conquer the senior living marketing landscape together.
Welcome, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today. I'm super excited for this panel conversation and to be the moderator. We have a really incredible group of panelists with deep expertise that span across marketing, sales, technology, and senior living. Today's discussion is going to be all about how technology and increasingly AI is shaping the way that we attract, engage, and convert prospects in senior living. We'll talk about what's working, where teams are seeing real ROI, and how the approach is shaping the way that we actually drive results. So just to get us started, I'll introduce myself quickly. My name is Meredith. I'm the Director of Marketing for GoIcon. I've been in the senior living space now going into my 5th year, which is very exciting, and loving working with all the amazing operators and tech partners in this space. So to get us started, I'd just love if each of our panelists could give a brief introduction of themselves so you can all get to know them. I will start off with Natasha.
Hi everybody, I'm Natasha Drake from Drake Strategic. I've been in senior living for 20 years. I think it's good to share that I started the first half of my career at the community level. So started right out of college as a concierge, as a lot of us do, sort of work our way in into the activity director role and then into sales and marketing. So spent my first half in actually at the community level operations and the second half at marketing agencies. I love marketing. I love sales too, but I love marketing more, and I really, did that bridge between sales and marketing. And then now for 3 years, I started my company 3 years ago, Drake Strategic. I do strategic consulting for marketing and sales. So really bridging that gap between agency world, right, and your sales and ops side, and helping you put up really good strategic plans. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello everyone, I'm Demi Mallios and I'm Director of Marketing for HumanGood. And HumanGood is one of the largest owners and operators of life plan communities and affordable housing communities. And I have been in the industry for about 12 years, and similar to Natasha, I've been in community roles and now more on the corporate side, but supporting our sales teams, working strategically together, locking hand in step with our marketing teams to work on strategies and helps our teams support occupancy goals. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Matt Reiners, Chief Growth Officer at Parasol Alliance. Been in the industry about 10 years, background of helped build and sell 2 technology startups. With Parasol, we're a technology partner solution for senior living communities, primarily helping not-for-profit CCRCs. Syracuse, New York is home for me, so if there's any other upstate New Yorkers, I don't know why you'd be here, but come say hello.
I'm Ryan Galea. I'm the CEO at GoIcon. We're a resident family engagement and staff communication platform serving about 2,500 communities throughout the US and Canada.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. We have a really great group of panelists today, so I think you're in for a really exciting, dynamic conversation. But before we jump into our kind of panel discussion, I want to set the stage a little bit for you. So today's conversation is going to follow 2 focuses. One is going to be exploring some of the tech tools that help teams work smarter, not harder. And then we're going to transition a little bit to talk more about leveraging your investment in technology as a community differentiator. So before we dig in, we have a little fun interactive activity here. So we want to hear from all of you. So we're going to do this by show of hands. But the question is, how would you describe your experience using AI in your senior living marketing strategy? So for anybody who would answer A, please raise your hand. Just getting started exploring what's possible. See a few hands going up. Awesome. Option 2 is experimenting with a few tools. So maybe you're leveraging AI just a little bit. Some of these techs, great. Option 3 is actively using AI in select campaigns and workflows. Awesome. Fully integrated AI is part of our core strategy. Anybody who's a heavy user of AI and tech in the audience? Awesome, love to see that. And then anybody who's not using it at all, that are here today to kind of learn about what's out there and how to get started. Okay, great. So it looks like we have some level of experience with AI and tech across the board. So that's awesome. Thank you all for your participation. And so to start us off, I think Ryan is going to take us through a little bit about what the landscape of sales and marketing tech and AI looks like today, just to kind of level set and make sure that we're all sort of speaking the same language.
Yeah, thanks. I'll just be pretty quick. I mean, I think there's a lot of logos up here, and I'm sure there's a million more tools that you all are using. And I think, it's kind of a symptom of where we are right now. There's a lot of noise, a lot of things are moving, things are happening quickly, and it's kind of tough to keep up at times. And I think that's fine. I think the key is to experiment and start small. Again, focus on the things that are going to have the most impact. And so, there's categories here, probably 3 buckets. There's tools that kind of summarize or help you synthesize your data. So things like sale call transcripts, recording those and taking notes for you. There's the second bucket, which is the more exciting bucket, which is kind of the automation bucket. So this is connecting the dots, so taking the content that happens in a call and actually synthesizing that to an email. And then there's the more agentic flows, which is really the next frontier, which is actually replacing entire job functions. And that's kind of the area where I think a lot of these, honestly, products are going to go away in the next couple of years. And they're going to be replaced, honestly, by the couple of big guys who have done a lot of work over the last 6 months to create, whether it's Claude Code or Codex, to try to consumerize that a bit more. And I think we'll see a lot more of that over the next 6 months. It's fine to start adopting tools and playing around with them, but I would, my recommendation is don't get them too ingrained into your tech stack, because things are going to be changing pretty quickly.
Awesome, thank you, Ryan. So now that we have sort of a little landscape, and this is by no means an extensive list of the tools that are out there. These are a few that popped into mind for us, things that we use ourselves. But there is actually a really interesting graphic out there on the internet that will show you all of the MarTech and your tech stack and options, and it's super overwhelming. So I always recommend to people to do their research and find something that's going to work for you, because they're not all one-size-fits-all solutions. One more piece of little presentation, and then we'll move into a more dynamic conversation for everybody. But Matt is actually going to run us through a quick ChatGPT use case so that you can see how somebody in this space would be leveraging AI in their day-to-day.
All right, so this is super simple. So basically, anyone in here can do this. We built out a custom GPT, right, in ChatGPT. We call it Parasol GPT. In the knowledge base, we uploaded all of our external facing copies, so everything on our website, and then every transcript that I could find from our founder and CEO just talking about Parasol, to really just align the messaging. So we make this available to our sales and marketing teams to really do that. So here, I don't know what question I'm asking because I have a terrible angle, but it's probably like, what is Parasol Alliance, maybe? Hopefully.
I didn't catch it quite away.
Okay, well, basically it's spitting out like our entire value prop and the things that we're doing. So what we can do is use this as a baseline as we're creating additional content, as we're putting sales presentations together, as we're handling RFPs. It just becomes this one-stop resource for us for everything Parasol. And what you could do is basically take all of your external facing copy, put it into a Word doc, put that into the knowledge base, and with this ChatGPT, it's the $30 a month function. So again, it just helps us with our content creation. So we're able to pump out content, blog posts, ebooks, all that sort of stuff with under our branding and our messaging very, very quickly now. And of course, still want a human element on the back end to make sure everything is legit and no hallucinations are taking place, but it's just a simple thing that we do. And I've got a custom GPT for a lot of the things that I deal with day to day. So.
I'll actually add to that.
Yep.
Yeah, we're doing something similar at HumanGood, leveraging Copilot, and we have everything uploaded into really a database, but it makes it an easy resource for all teams to access if there's a question, if there's maybe a contract question. Of course, we still encourage that there's still a live conversation had with their community lead, but it's a helpful resource to have there that we know everything uploaded is factual. And again, it's still managed by our IT team and people are behind it, humans are behind it. But I think it gives another touch point of leveraging AI internally, and it allows for more of a controlled environment versus using something like an external chat platform.
Can I add one little thing? Sorry, one more thing to add too. Something I've seen that you all might be seeing is when you do your own organic social posting. This is really tough as you're working with, whether it's a young marketing coordinator, right, or someone in your lifestyle department, engagement department. That's also where I've seen this be successful with a few of my clients, is they're able to create those social posts, those creative posts in ways that it doesn't take them all day. It doesn't take them half a day, right? It can spit things out with this knowledge you've built in. So it's another way you can utilize this as well.
Fantastic. Thank you all. You can hang on to that
Okay.
one and pass it down that way. I'll give you this after. So with that said, I think we have a pretty good foundation for our conversation today, grounding it in sort of what's out there, how it can be used. But we will start our panel discussion now. So to start us off, for organizations that are just getting started with AI, we're going to ask our panelists, where would you recommend they begin to see quick wins without overwhelming your team? So to kick this off, I'm going to hand it over to Natasha.
Yeah, thanks. I think this is interesting. As Ryan was saying, there's a lot of technology. It's very overwhelming. It also can be a little maybe gimmicky, and maybe it's just, well, this is what I'm seeing now everywhere. I'm seeing this on social, or I'm getting ads, or right, you're doing the newest thing, and it's very easy to quickly just implement something, right? Let's just get it, let's buy it, let's set it up. And that can be overwhelming for everyone on your team, especially your sales team or your clinical team. And is it really solving a problem, right? Like a lot of times we implement these things, I don't know, because they're cool or someone else is doing them or your competitor has it on their website, right? So we sign these things up. But if it's not solving a problem, you have to look at that first. And so the place I say to start first is don't fix everything. Don't do it all at once. Find where you have those gaps. Where is the revenue leaking, right? Where can we see the biggest ROI? And that's where you want to start. For most communities, if you have occupancy and census challenges, right, it's there. It's in your sales and marketing. What can we implement that will give our sales teams and give our occupancy quick wins? And and we'll go into this further, but whether it's more of web conversions, automations, how can we get higher quality leads? How can we help the sales team to have a higher speed to lead, reduce the conversion, the gap in time from top of the funnel to the bottom? So start to look at that. Look at the problems you're seeing. Where do they lie? Is it clinical? Is it dining? Is it engagement? Or is it occupancy, where you can get the biggest, fastest ROI? And I know, Demi and I have spoke about this. HumanGood is doing this as well, so she has some examples to share.
Thank you. Yeah, just to underscore Natasha's point, look at places where you can start small, not to overwhelm your teams, and really what are things that are actionable. So for example, a post-tour survey, which is something that's immediate, that can be triggered through automation right after a tour is completed, is a way to really catch a prospect right after they've toured your community or met with your team or a family member. And then having an automation in place that then can read and screen the survey response so that AI is really capturing those sentiments to understand where did we really shine or where are there places for improvement. So not only does this help sales and occupancy, but it also helps operations to see where are there gaps and where can improvements be made. So those are immediate action items that you can get into action almost instantly. Another tool that we're piloting is a chatbot. So Sophie is our chatbot agent with Further. And we've noticed over the years we're missing calls, whether it's nights and weekends, or if the sales team is away executing an event, we'll say. So we want to make sure we're closing that gap and answering all calls. So this is a bot that we're able to customize all the information, upload exactly what we want the chatbot to say, and it allows for that conversation to still be had and then still get in touch with a live person. So I really want to emphasize, we're not looking to replace team members. We're really just looking to support the sales team and help them better execute their jobs and stay in the selling zone. So one other tool just to throw out there is pre-screening tools, which some of you may already be utilizing, but quizzes on your website, such as a money gauge quiz, which is something to see, are you financially screened and qualified before making it to have a conversation with our sales team. Rubric is another quiz that we do use. So having these tools online, again, for pre-screening purposes to help save the sales team some time. Again, it helps them stay in the selling zone and then close that occupancy gap, but also informs operational success as well.
Ryan or Matt, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think the one thing I'll add, where to win those quick wins. They talk about a death by 1,000 cuts. There's definitely a death by 1,000 different AI softwares out there. I think it's trying to figure out what problem are you trying to solve. and then really going and embracing that. I think a good mentality for anybody using AI is automate the mundane to elevate the meaningful. I think we all deal with some level of mundane work throughout our day-to-day. And just looking to automate that as much as possible, minimize the time spent on that to really elevate that meaningful, and to each, meaningful means something else. And I think it's just fixing those problems, finding solutions for that, and really just setting yourself up for success and celebrating those quick wins, but be quick to iterate too if you need to.
Yeah, but the only thing I would add, there's a lot of time top down. It's easy to assume where you're gonna have the biggest impact, but at the end of the day, the boots on the ground are gonna have a much better feel. And so sometimes just giving access to the team to tools, getting that Claude subscription and letting the team kind of experiment and figure out ways that they can improve their workflows and learn from that. And then once you find those opportunities, scale it further to the rest of the team.
Awesome, thank you. I did see a couple hands raised. I'll take your question now, but for the rest of the questions, we'll hang on to them at the end.
Okay, real fast, I just wanted to go back to how you said that you have input the information into your chat GPT for the social media aspect of it, right? So that way your staff can just, so what are you doing? Are you putting your guidelines, your branding, your whatever into
You could probably explain that more. How do you implement all that into your own ChatGPT?
Yeah, so for ChatGPT, if you you go explore GPT's top right, and then you can create your own, and then in the back of it, there's a knowledge base section. So I basically just take in and put in there my guidelines, the voice, all the stuff like that, and I'll take summaries from some of that stuff. So I'm just building that into the knowledge base. And then, as I'm prompting it, making sure that we are pulling from that, and you can kind of turn it off so it's not going onto the web and finding that stuff. And I know with other things, it's similar things.
I think, you can put in a lot of your blogs, you can put in a lot of your calendars and types of posts you've done that have been successful. Like you can tell it, these types of posts have had the most engagement or the most shares, and then over time it gets better. It's hard in the beginning, but over time it gets better. And of course, as we all know, with AI, you've got to review it, you've got to customize it, you got to watch it, but it gives you at least a starting point. I always say, even with my company, it's easier to edit and refine than to start from scratch, right? So it gives you a place to start. And I've just seen a lot of the clients I work with, I do, manage all their sales and marketing. That's where we have big gaps, is that organic social posts, because those corporate posts look corporate, right? They don't look real. And so how can we help them? How can we help these teams be able to do this while they're doing the rest of their work? So thank you for the question.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
It was a good question.
And I'll just share one example. So what I do for my own personal side of LinkedIn, so I post a lot on LinkedIn. If anybody here is connected with me, I apologize for my constant posting. But I've created a GPT called Matt GPT. It's me with a full head of hair, for the record. But in the knowledge base, I basically have exported every LinkedIn message I've ever sent. So I've got 8,000 lines of code, and then I've of my voice. And then I put together like content pillars, my top 50 posts. So, I still have to have the idea. I run the prompt, and then it gets me like 80-90% of the way there. So that helps with my own social media where, with that I do one per day and do about like 800,000 impressions per year.
Sorry.
Awesome, thank you guys. So we sort of started the conversation with, well, where do you start? What should you explore, and where can you see quick wins? But that leads us nicely into our second question here, which is the fact that oftentimes when you are implementing a new technology, there's a gap between implementing it and fully leveraging it. So what best practices have helped all of you and your organizations so that they actually get measurable ROI out of the tech that they're investing into? And so I think for this one, we're gonna have Matt lead off.
Yeah, so I think it's such an important question, and I think, when you look at these technology companies that are talking and promising all this ROI, I heard from a COO that if she got all the ROI that was promised to her, she'd be, they'd have multi-millions in the bank based on the technology that they're getting. When I think about technology, though, I think it's more change management than really just implementing technology. We need to figure out what the process is, who's owning it. I think there's a big gap in senior living of who actually owns the business systems. No one's raising their hand saying, hey, this is ours, we're gonna run with it, we're gonna optimize it. Who's doing the training, who's doing the accountability? Yes, we've done it in 30 days. What does 30 days, 30 through 60 look like? And it really is, how do we change and use that technology to be sticky and constantly keep it moving forward? You know, and I always like to say before embracing any new platform, we like to ask the questions. I'll check my notes here. Who owns it? What behavior are we trying to change? What problem are we trying to solve? How will we train people on it? And how will we know if it worked? And what does that constant accountability look like if we're really going to lean into it? And then I think too with technology is just making sure if it's not working, it's okay to adjust and reiterate and kind of go back to the drawing board. Not fun, but it does take place.
I was just going to add to that. Oh, is this on?
Oh, I turned it off.
Oh, that's okay. I was going to add to that, especially with the sales teams. You know, I know Demi and I spoke about this, is you want to make sure they understand how this is helping them. You know, I see a lot of pushback when, especially on the marketing side, and we have a lot of this automation and a lot of this AI tools. And sometimes from the sales team, it seems like, you know, what are you having me do now? You know, what is this? And they don't adopt it, right? It's like an implementation, but they don't really see the value in it. And so it's really important to make sure, to what Matt was saying in terms of training, yes, of course, you're going to have these different times of training and making sure you're using it properly, but how is it helping them? Show them how it's going to reduce the amount of time they have to enter their notes, or they have to work with the, you know, other things they have to do, right? So making sure they understand it and they see that. And that, to Matt's point, the biggest thing I've seen in communities is someone not owning it. Who is owning that? We have to have KPIs to track it and follow through and see those results. Especially for, you know, board members, right, or your CEOs, we have to be able to say, yes, this might have been a lot of money up front, but look at the ROI, look at the results long term. Yeah, it's on.
Let's check in. Yeah, so just to piggyback off what Natasha mentioned and Matt, I think it's also really critical to find those early adopters within your sales team, but also outside the sales office. We always say it's not just the sales team that's selling the community, it's the experience that people feel when they step on campus. So you want to make sure it expands beyond just your sales team and really bring everyone along to understand, how does this help our community? How does this help the greater good? And really have those tools available too, so that people feel like they're equipped with the knowledge. So it's not a one-time training, as we're all saying, it's ongoing training, early adopters, so that it's a peer-to-peer collaboration as well. We love peer-to-peer, and I think we learned so much from our peers, so it's a great way to get that adoption out there and have people really get behind it and excited about it. And they want to feel confident talking about these great tools when they're in their meetings or discovery meetings with prospects or family members. So it's a great way to keep the sales team engaged, but again, also other community life members, people who are outside, buildings and grounds, outside of the sales office, because we're all part of that sales journey.
Yeah, and I think, you know, one more thing on kind of the change management aspect, you know, it's, again, making the KPIs, whatever you're tracking at the leadership level to measure success, making that visible to the frontline staff so they can see that progress, and celebrating the wins when you have them, making those visible. You know, beyond that, you know, less on the change management side, more on the tactical side. You know, one of the more obvious points is the connection piece, and making sure that any of these tools you implement, the data is flowing from step A to step B. So whether it's integrations, and making sure your platforms are speaking to each other, or even making sure that the data that you're capturing on your websites, making it through to the sales reps so they can actually use that data in their conversations. You know, there's tons of times where you'd be surprised that the information is not getting to the right person. So just making sure you have those two things thought through and in place. And then the final piece that I think is more apt in the current day and age is, you know, a lot of times when we implement tech, we're adding tech, or we're incorporating it into an existing workflow. And so you're asking staff to change what they're doing and add something to it, and we're kind of hoping it's going to make things faster, essentially. It's much easier to get ROI when you replace whole steps or you replace whole workflows, and that time is fully now back in the rep's hands to do something entirely new. And so to the extent that you can do full replacements of workflows, that's even better. So, you know, an easy example is, I think I mentioned earlier, you know, you have, maybe you're recording your phone calls or your prospect conversations. Automating that, not only giving you the summary afterwards, but taking that and drafting the email response for you, so it's sitting in your drafts folder, so you can just click send automatically right afterwards. You've removed a whole set of steps there. And so thinking through replacements, not additions to existing flows.
Great, thank you guys. So we've talked a little bit about getting started, what's out there, getting return on investment for it. We've talked a little bit about sort of that change management, implementing it, making sure that you are fully leveraging the tech solutions that you bring in. But now we're going to transition to what I think most people want to hear about, which is how it's actually being used. So to our panelists here, how are you using AI or automation today to help your sales and marketing teams work smarter, not harder? We've touched on it a little bit, but I think Demi's going to get into a little bit more detail about some real world examples. So hopefully these are things that you might be able to take away and action quickly.
Thank you. Yes. So yeah, I touched on MoneyGauge, which is a financial pre-screening that we have available on our website. And Rubric is another quiz available that we have online on our website, which allow people to determine what level of living they may be interested in. Is it independent living, assisted living, or a higher level of care that's needed? So I won't spend too much more time on those two quizzes, but I do want to dive in a bit more on how we're leveraging automation and native integrations. I think Ryan touched on this a bit too. Finding ways that we can natively integrate with different platforms of what we're already utilizing, and then where are there partnerships where the integrations allow for that feedback to come right into our workflows. So talking back to our CRM and vice versa, so that it's already in a prospective resident's profile of how was that survey and what was their feedback. What are the sentiments and what different points were pulled out that we can capitalize on to customize their next experience so that they know that they're heard. And our sales team is really tuned in to curating that experience for them. We're really leveraging review management at the moment, which is something that is here to stay, especially with AEO and how AI search engines are pulling our communities and local listings. So we operate throughout the country in 9 states. We have to localize our listings. How we perform in Philadelphia, PA is not how we'll perform in California. So we have to make sure we're localizing our listings, and review generation, not just volume of reviews, but your review rating also is a big factor. So we now partnered with a company to help with our review management. And again, it's all through automation, which is amazing. It takes off the sales team's plate, what they need to do and follow up. And it still allows for that feedback workflow to come through and connect in with our CRM, which is Salesforce. So looking for those native integrations, I think, is really critical, and just helping with AI just to search results. And we're focusing primarily on Google as our main search engine for reviews, but just understanding that that also needs to be part of your marketing and sales process, especially now with the ever-changing AI landscape.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think the way I'm seeing it really is to piggyback off what Demi is saying, is it's really about speed to lead, first touch, right, and follow up. That's kind of what we're lumping these things in. We know now that 90 to 95% of our consumers, our prospects, are doing most of that sales journey on your website, unfortunately, right? It didn't used to be like that. It used to be those are just the top of the funnel leads, and then we want them here and we want to work them. It's not that way anymore. It's taken me a good 5 to 10 years to believe that and agree with it, but it's true. Many people make decisions, right, before they even call you, before they even make that conversion. And so it's really important that on your website, you have all of these conversion points, to Demi's point. So you've got the quizzes. You can have interactive site maps where people can really see the whole layout of the campus. They can look at the different floor plans. They can put furniture in. I mean, that's what they want, right? They want to visualize themselves. So you really have to make sure you have all that on there and that you're having that quick response. So that's where the conversion points, the chat bots are really important. I have seen 40 to 50% increase in quality conversions. So after implementing these, that's how much of an increase I saw. And I was like, well, are these actually qualified leads, or are they just numbers? Those were the ones, besides professional referrals, that closed and actually moved in at the highest rate. So it is bringing you those higher quality leads because they're more engaged, right? They're on your website. They're looking at everything. They're looking at your blogs. They're getting all their questions answered, and you're automating, to I think Ryan and Matt talked about this earlier, automating that chatbot after hours. Another thing that's kind of new, and I know it's kind of scary, but it's this text, I think Ryan, you touched on this, is the text and email via AI. It's not just a bot. So a lot of the chatbots, right, work on pre-entered responses, right? So you have the pre-entered responses. Well, now you can actually have automated email and text follow-up for those late night and having conversations. I thought it was really scary, but I've seen it done at a few of my communities, and it's actually really, really good and really strong. And it's that first touch. Many people choose a community, especially assisted living, memory care, higher clinical, right, communities need that pretty quick response, they end up choosing a community just because you were the first to respond. So if your competitor has these and you don't, and they find more information than you have, or they have these automated after hours, you're gonna lose a number of move-ins from that. The last thing I'm gonna mention here too is the website engagement, which we kind of talked about, but you really need to make sure that they're staying on your website longer. So having those tools, it's a small investment, it's really gonna help you get more of those quality conversions.
One thing I'll add, sorry for texting, someone just texted me to say I won the gift card scratch off basket out there, so I'm feeling pretty pumped up right now about that. I texted to my wife, so sorry about that. And I think Demi and Natasha give real world examples at the community level. I can only speak for what I do, and we're partnering with senior living communities, so and hopefully this just gets you thinking about what you could do. So from my perspective, if I am going into a call with a community, I've built out this custom GPT for us where I just put /discovery, I put the domain in, it gives me all the information I need about that specific community, key leadership, any recent news articles that came out, any questions that they think I should be asking, putting in notes to send to my boss so when she's prepared to get on. And then on the call, we are recording it, taking that transcript, putting it back into that, I just put /CRM, so it gets me all the notes I need from that call, so I can just put that directly into our CRM. And then I'll use that to help follow up with the follow-up email, adjusting the proposal, adjusting kind of deliverables by that. So it's like this mundane stuff that we all have to deal with, but it's just helping to optimize and take out some of those steps that we're doing to just work smarter and not harder. And I look at AI, I always ask myself the question, what does this look like if I'm really freaking lazy? So, trying to answer that.
Yeah, well, one more thing I'd add more from again, it can be used at the community level. We do it at the vendor level, which is at the more from a management perspective. Look across, or have AI look across the transcripts from every single rep's call, multiple reps, and try to identify what is resonating, what stuff should we lean into more, and then servicing that to our reps so that they can use that in conversations and have a more productive conversation at the end of the day.
I just want to add one more thing.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, just one more thought I want to put out there. Consider auditing also your communities to see how they are serving in AI listings, whether it's chat, Claude, Perplexity. But it's really now important more than ever because SEO is now impacted because of AEO. So our paid ads, and I'm sure most of you are seeing this, I see heads nodding in the room, our paid ads are now very low on the page. Yep. So AI overviews are taking over, and we really want to show up in those AI overviews because we want to get people, to your point, on our websites, get them engaged, and then get them in touch with a chatbot or a live sales team member to help them with that big decision that they're weighing out. So please do an audit and understand how your communities are showing up.
One thing I'll add too, as you're thinking about this from the community level, I came across a custom GPT that was definitely meant to be private for a senior living community group. Yes. It's no one in here, no one in PA, so don't worry. But I started asking it, what's our discount policy? And it was definitely giving me the answers to that. So
make it private.
If you're gonna make it private internally, make sure you make it private internally, okay?
Yeah, no, good point.
That's some really great advice, Matt. So we've covered sort of that first half of the conversation about what's out there, how to implement it, what's available to help you work smarter, not harder. But with this next question, we're going to kind of transition to the back half of this conversation, which is really about leveraging your technology investment as a unique differentiator. As we all know, the landscape of the senior living resident is kind of changing. We're seeing sort of the baby boomers starting to come into communities now. So this first question on the second half here is how are we seeing technology influencing the decision-making process of today's senior living prospects and their families? So the adult children, the residents themselves. So to kick this off, maybe Matt or Ryan, would you like to lead us off here?
I see Ryan starts here, but I don't see any notes for you. Number 4? Okay. Yeah, so with families, right, I think they're just not evaluating the care anymore, right? I think it's just this whole experience that technology is enabling, especially that first touch, right? I'm finding more and more communities are obviously going to your websites, hopefully your websites first and not some of those third-party aggregators. I won't call them out any by name. I think you guys can all think about who I'm talking about. But it's really just the first impression, right? I've gone to websites that feel like they were built 20 years ago. I've gone to others that are definitely optimized and making sure that you're, set up for success. But, that first impression, we talk about the first impression of someone walking into your community, but a lot of times that first impression is happening online. It's happening on your social media. It's happening on your website. And if things feel outdated or clunky or disconnected, families just may wonder what else behind the scenes feels that way. And it can, I don't think necessarily someone will make a decision based off your website alone, but it definitely impacts that decision one way or another.
Okay.
To add a couple more areas we're seeing directly. One is what I call the Netflixification of senior living, and that's this idea of hyper-personalization. I think due to all the other tech out there in the world, consumers have gotten used to this idea that everything's going to be personalized to them. Every experience is going to be unique. You get your personalized Netflix recommendations. They expect that now everywhere. And so we've seen a lot of success with communities that are able to learn and do deep understanding of their prospects, and throughout the prospect journey, emphasize those points of personalization. An example that we help enable is around the programming, the activity calendar, and again using kind of a website widget to capture interests, and then when they hit the calendar, only show the events that are going to be interesting to them. And so it makes it feel like, oh, this community was meant for me. And so using tech to enable that is definitely a unique thing we're seeing more and more, and an expectation in an area where a lot of communities aren't doing it yet. So you can really stand out if you do take that extra step. I think Demi might have mentioned too that in other areas around this online reviews and just how impactful that's become into the decision-making process. Especially when you get up higher in acuity, if you look at like AL and memory care, the adult daughter 90% of the time is making the decision of where their parent goes, and they're typically millennials or Gen X, and I think that the stat is about 95% of them look at least one online review and making a decision. And so making sure you have a really good online presence there is incredibly important. And then one last one is just around tech can help, especially with the adult daughter, it's a tough decision sometimes when you're moving your family member into a higher acuity setting. And so using tech or showing that you have tech as a community to facilitate connections, so a family app, for example, can be really good at kind of easing some of those tensions and showing that you really care about keeping the family members in the loop and connected.
Yeah, and I sort of mentioned this earlier with the website and that first impression. So again, 90 to 95% of the prospects are making that decision, that first impression, before they even talk to you. So really, you need to do a website review and a website audit, not only if you have this technology on your site, but what's the user experience? How easy is it to find the information? Are you talking about the technologies that you have at your community on your website, and how are you talking about them? And we're gonna get into this a little bit later, but it's really not, I do a lot of website reviews, and I see a lot of, here's what we have, and they just list the technologies, right? All the different programs they use. And people, we all see that and we all don't buy it. We want to know, what are the outcomes? What are the technologies doing for our families and our residents and our team? And having videos, having case studies, having real KPIs, tracking that, showing that. That's authentic, right? That makes someone have that first impression and say, even if it's not the flashiest, shiniest community, that has more of an impact. So think about that decision-making process, if it's all happening on your website. So when I go in and I do an assessment, I do that. I think of myself as the prospect. Can I get all my questions answered? Is it easy to use? And am I impacted by this website before I even go? Because a lot of times, and those of you in sales and marketing know this, they'll look past a lot of those things at the community because they see how much you care and because they see that you've invested in these technologies for your loved one. Right? And that's what's most important. So really making sure you're analyzing not just what tech you're using at the community, but how you're talking about it and how you're showing that on your website.
All right, thank you all. I love that idea of the Netflixification and personalization. That really stands out, and that's something that us as marketers are always thinking of on a day-to-day basis. How can we personalize this message? How can we personalize your experience? And so I think that's super powerful. So moving on to our next question here is many communities will invest in great technology, but oftentimes they struggle with how to communicate that value. So what I'm wondering here is, how are you equipping your sales teams to confidently position your tech as a competitive advantage? So we'll get started off with Natasha and Debbie here.
And I sort of just segued that on the last thing I just talked about. I know. Not planned, no. It's making sure your sales team is confident. I also do a number of mystery shops and listen to sales calls. And again, a lot of times they're just listing, oh, we have this, we have AccuShield for your safety. And they're listing them off. And that's not their fault. They may not have any idea what the outcomes are, especially if they're clinical or if it's dining or engagement. Do they know that? Do they know what technologies you're using and what it does and what are the outcomes? Because if your sales team feels confident to tell a story, not just to give those outcomes, to say, let me tell you about how this has helped so-and-so, and them telling that story. So make sure your sales teams feel confident, they know what technology you have, they feel confident sharing those outcomes and those stories, really giving those examples. And the biggest thing is, I gotta just mention this, but shift from features to outcomes. That's the biggest thing. A lot of times it's just listing features. So think of it as what I just mentioned on your website. Don't just list features, right? Show them. Same thing with your sales team, that they feel confident to really talk about that outcome and not specifically to the feature. And I know HumanGood is doing this as well. So Demi, let you talk about that.
Yeah, so I already touched on a bit of these tools that we want to kind of equip our sales teams with, of course. But I also want to mention that there are ways that you can really leverage tools such as PackIQ, which helps more on the admission side of your workflows. So not just focused on independent living, but how are we helping with hospital referrals? And with this system, you're able to really streamline that process. And it helps the team, which is our post-acute liaison team, really scan and streamline what is coming in. And I think that gives then family members that peace of mind. I know it's really reducing that time that we can get back to family members and then admit somebody into one of our health centers. So understanding tools such as PackIQ or whatever other tool might be helpful with your teams, really just to increase that speed and urgency, because they do want to be helped instantly. So we know that, as Natasha mentioned, if we lose somebody from our website and they go to the next competitor, it's really what that experience is like. So we want to ensure we're curating those experiences. It's not all about the care, focus, and center, but where does it start from independent living all the way through the continuum? And if we do a custom welcome sign like Netflix does, hi Demi, welcome, do that for your prospective residents or family members. Have a parking spot designated for that individual who will be touring the campus that day. So where can we find those small wins and those touch points? And yes, with technology and AI, but even just the overall experience, and how can we make it more beneficial for those families and those prospective residents that are visiting our communities.
And we talking about the outcomes. I think a great way to do that is just storytelling of how it positively impacted someone's life. So the former company I was at was called Eversound, helped people to hear better during group programming. Now under Unigast, but we would hear stories of residents going to resident council for the first time or going to the resident council meeting they've been going for 7 years. It was the first time they're able to hear every single word, right? Because they could actually hear what was going on. So I think leaning into the storytelling and making sure your sales teams practices those stories in the mirror to each other. You don't want the first time that they're doing it as being with someone that's coming in and touring, just to help set them up for success as well.
Or invite those residents to be part of the conversation.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes. Yes.
Great.
Fantastic. So we have about 15 minutes left. So what I want to do is transition to our final question. These are some takeaways and some advice for you, and then we're going to pause at the end of this and start our Q&A session. So I'll be walking around with the microphone. If you have a question, just feel free to raise your hand, and we will lob it over to the panelists to answer. But our final question here is just, in wrapping this up, what is one piece of advice that you would give to organizations that are just getting started with AI or are looking to position their technology as a true differentiator? So perhaps we can just kind of go down the line here and give some final thoughts. Maybe we can start down there with Ryan.
Yeah, I think this is related to what everyone was just saying, but don't market that you use AI. No one cares. It's probably a knock on you if you say we're using AI. Focus on the outcome at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think if you're just starting to use AI, create an AI policy internally. What platform are you using? What are you telling people to upload? What are you telling them, most importantly, not to upload? Just so you can make sure that you're holding people accountable to that. I see so many times shadow AI taking place where, Copilot might be available to the team, but people are using ChatGPT or Claude. So just make sure you're intentional with that policy, and as you're thinking about it, don't just start with the tool, start with the friction. What problem are you trying to solve? And then go and find a solution, and making sure that you're optimizing for that. The organizations that win with AI and technology will not be the ones chasing every shiny object. They'll be the ones that use it intentionally to make the human experience better.
Well, and I'll keep mine short and sweet, but really don't use AI as just a tool, and use it as a strategy. Think bigger picture. How is this going to be adopted? So from the early part of rolling it out to then where are we in the next 10 years, which we're not really sure where we're going because AI is changing by the day, and how it impacts how we market, how we sell. But think of it more as a strategy and not just, again, what's shiny, what's the next technology tool out there, oh, we're going to jump at that and transition over. Keep things in the system for a bit so you can see how do they function, what's the data telling us, and then make the shift accordingly. But look at the overall strategy, not just AI as an isolated tool.
And I sort of just mentioned this, but the really big thing is, tech is not your story, right? That's not your story. You are the story. Tech should support who you are and elevate who you are. And from a marketing perspective, make sure you're using that, the outcomes, you're tracking, metrics, KPIs, get video testimonials of your family members and residents, and even your clinical team sharing a lot of. I've had one where it was a nurse, and she's sharing how it's helped her have more time with her residents, and capture that stuff on your website.
Fantastic. So some really powerful closing remarks there. I think this was a super valuable conversation for us to have, and as you all know, any of us could probably deep dive and spiral into a conversation for hours on this stuff. So this is just scratching the surface. But at this point, we will open things up to conversation, questions. I do have up here, if anybody is interested or has a follow-up question, maybe that pops in your mind a few days from now, a week from now, I did include all of our email addresses, so I'm sure any of the panelists up here would be happy to help you, whether it's just bouncing an idea off of us or wanting to learn more about any of our services or technology. So do please feel free to reach out, but I will stop yapping now and let all of you ask questions. So feel free to raise your hand and I'll come around with the microphone so that our panelists can hear you.
Oh, one back there.
Should have worn my flats today. I'm stepping out of my high heels.
You mentioned shadowing of AI systems. Does that practice dilute results or impact results for an organization if they're doing that?
Yeah, so I think this is me, right? Shadowing.
Was you or Demi? I don't remember.
Was it you? Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I think it's for you, Matt.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, so when I was saying shadow AI, so thinking that you might have rolled something out to your community, to your team, and they're using their own thing, right? So in terms of diluting, I do think it gets better over time, but I think if you just want to be consistent with your team and making sure that they're using that, I think the biggest concern is, someone going and uploading information in the ChatGPT that's PHI, HIPAA, right? We want to avoid that. Don't do that. But if you have it set up, if you're paying for the Copilot and you're feeling more confident in the security behind that, just making sure that other people aren't doing that. Maybe you'll give a pass, but have that policy in place if someone wants to use something else, that they're making sure they're going through the right approval process to do that, because the last thing you want to see is what I said before, someone creates a custom GPT, thinks it's private, and then anybody can go and ask about their discount policy and stuff. So hopefully that answered.
Other folks, anybody else in the room have a question? Don't be shy.
And if anyone's using AI in cool ways too, that you want to do humble brags out there, we'd love to hear those too.
Yes, absolutely. I do think it's important to kind of see what other strategies folks in the audience are using. So if you have an example of something that's worked really well for your community, please feel free to raise your hand. We'd love to hear, as Matt called them, humble brags.
So I don't necessarily have anything I want to brag about. I do have several different types of technologies that we're using within our organization. The one thing that I really took away from this, ironically, is, when you're rolling something out, you always bring your managers together to be like, hey, this is what we're doing. But nowhere in there are the sales teams involved in the continuous education. And ironically, right after this meeting, I have another meeting to talk about bridging the gap and putting the pieces together. So this honestly couldn't have happened at a better time, because the reality of it is the salespeople who are really selling.
Yes.
Your products, the whole 9 yards, right? But if they don't have enough information to back it up, to them, they're just feature dumping. Oh, we have this, and we have that, and we have this, and we have. They don't really understand it. Yeah. And as somebody who's been in sales and marketing for 30 years, I'm embarrassed that I never really thought about that.
Yeah.
Honestly.
It was fate that you were here. So
It really was. It really was.
And I think when I was on the operations side, and you call it stand-up meetings, right, or whatever you want to call that, it's sort of like that, but it's the people that are owning the technologies coming together and sharing. So it's not just a lot of times people will lump that into your stand-up meeting. Well, you have so much stuff to talk about at that in terms of clinical things going on, right? Who's moving in, who's moving out, all of that. So having those specific meetings to talk about the technologies and who's owning it from each department. So say it's your life engagement team, your dining, your clinical team, and the sales and marketing team. That's the best way. You can say, wow, I saw Mrs. Jones did X this week. She's never come out of her room. She was never engaged to come to activities. And the sales team is there going, write that down. Let's get that in our marketing. So those types of meetings.
I would say even like town hall meetings involving residents and bringing them along as part of the journey.
Yes.
Well, ironically, I think
great.
those residents actually probably have more information than sales.
Well, yes. Yes.
And they're your greatest ambassadors too. As
Yes.
you know, so yeah.
That was great. I love the aha moment. That makes me really happy.
Honestly, thinking, this is I'm literally going from this meeting to that. That's it.
Great.
That's the problems.
Something to be said for perfect timing. Do we have any other questions in the audience?
This is more for the sales and marketing side. Sometimes we share information, through different forums, whether it's LinkedIn, Facebook, and more. Have you seen a trend in how our consumers that we're actually trying to reach absorb their information?
Do you mean like which social media platform do you feel is
Our actual, consumers, not just our staff,
right,
or our friends, or colleagues.
So this one also depends as well, of course, as your type of community. So of course, if you're a higher acuity assisted living memory care, where it's mostly younger adult children versus maybe it's a IL 55 plus life plan where it's the prospect themselves, right? It varies. And I'll let you talk to this too, but Meta, which is, Facebook, Instagram is still really number one, especially in terms of boomers. They love Facebook and Meta. And some of their adult children, if they're on the Gen X span, they do really prefer Meta, which is Facebook and Instagram. We are seeing some of the younger generation very off, but I still think that that's the strongest. We do LinkedIn as well, especially if you're a community that does a lot of referrals. You are a memory care assisted living, right? You do a lot of unpaid, which you should, professional referrals. A lot of people don't do LinkedIn. And I think that that's where it's really important to get all that out there. Have someone owning those posts because they're very different, right, than your Facebook posts. But the more that your referrals, right, if they know that they refer to 5 or 6, whether it's skilled nursing, assisted living, whatever it is, communities, and they see you constantly posting your outcomes, your technology stories, your family stories, guess who they're going to call, right? They're going to go, oh, I know who does that. So that's where LinkedIn really helps from a professional referral perspective, but I'm still seeing Meta be the strongest. Yeah. And just also in terms of, I wanted to say, think of social traffic as brand awareness and driving traffic to your website. Rarely do you get actual leads directly from social media, but it is a very strong retargeting tool and driving traffic to your website.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I completely agree. Meta is still tried and true for us. That's where we're spending our paid dollars when it comes to social. We've seen a really big breakthrough with testimonial style content, so storytelling, resident stories. anything like that we can push out on Facebook or Instagram is really converting high on our website then. So we're seeing that that's a big factor to keep in mind when you're doing your campaigns on Facebook. Organic Facebook, we don't do as much of because we do have a large scale, so we're doing more of an effort on the paid side. But Meta is still our top tier where we focus our dollars and budget. And then LinkedIn, of course, serves its purpose more on the team member side, referral side, thought leadership. So I would say each has a role to play, but Meta would be more with our prospective residents. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I have another question. So I guess when we think about LinkedIn, obviously it's a professional platform, but with the next group of people that are coming in, I'm wondering, have you seen like the flip side of that, where people are actually coming to you from LinkedIn because they were a professional, they're retiring, and now they've seen all your outcomes and all that kind of fun stuff, not on a referral basis, more on a personal basis.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, are you seeing that?
I'm not personally seeing that yet, but I can totally see that happening
Yeah,
because
right?
LinkedIn wasn't huge 10, 15 years ago, and now it really is. So I'm thinking of me, for example, and us who are in this space and are on there. Oh, I know all the senior livings in my area where my parents live. So you're right. I mean, I really do think that's going to change the next few years. Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how that dynamic shifts.
Yeah, and you can do targeted, advertising like Demi was saying on LinkedIn too, to just basically do the same way you do it on Meta to be able to target those people. You can do it by career and job, and so you could pinpoint those people that actually work in that career space to target them for their families. I know it's scary, but you can. So.
All right, I'm really done now.
Unless you start talking again. Well, this is fantastic. We are at time, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. But I can't thank you all enough for being here with us today, especially given that this is your last session of the day.
Yes, thank you.
We'll all be up front hanging around for a few minutes if you have any additional questions we didn't cover or that you wanted to ask us one-on-one. But thank you again. We hope you all took something away from this today. And hopefully we'll see you back here next year with some exciting new information.
Real quick, if you enjoyed watching the podcast today, please follow me and subscribe so you're notified for the next podcast. And if you have any questions or want to talk after about anything that Drake Strategic can provide for you, please reach out to me, call me, email me, or visit our website at drakestrategic.com.